Welcome to another data science deep dive in our technical track. In the following presentation, Sylvia Amiri, Director of Research Infrastructure at 23andMe, describes building genomic analysis and ML platforms for personalized health and drug discovery using large-scale genetics and phenotypic data at 23andMe. The focus of this talk will be on the technology and infrastructure for building and surfacing models to 10 million plus customers, as well as technologies for internal research and therapeutics discovery work. Enjoy.
Hi, everyone. Thanks very much for having me here. I'm Shiva Amiri. I'm the Director of Research Infrastructure at 23andMe. And today I'm going to be talking about building data science solutions for personalized health and medicine, and generally the work we've been doing at 23andMe to address both of those sides, both predictive health and medicine, from sort of a data science computational perspective. Quick agenda, introduction, the research at 23andMe, powering the research, so the big data infrastructure, which is what my team does, and then data science at 23andMe. I'm going to focus on some health models and then get a little bit into target discovery, which is the work of our therapeutics team, which is, you could say, the past 5 years they've existed. So it's a sort of a new team at 23andMe. So what's exciting about now? Why is this important? Why is this a good time? First of all, there's a lot more data available, public and private sources, from research institutions, universities, companies. We're all coming together to share data, make data available. More than ever, you can see this now as well with the COVID-19 research and the pace of data sharing and science that has we've been able to see in the past year. There's also better performance and easier access to compute. There's multiple cloud providers like AWS, Microsoft Azure, Google Cloud. So there's a lot at our fingertips that wasn't there necessarily even 10 years ago. And then there's been advances in algorithms for machine learning, deep learning, far more sophisticated algorithms, optimized. A lot of progress on image and voice recognition, natural language processing, all of that, and other kinds. And of course, there's been the progress in digital biology and digital health. And again, COVID-19 brought on huge opportunities for us to think differently about health and digital health. And how do we take care of ourselves at home? How do we get the most out of technology when we think about health? Just the wheel on the side here is looking at some of the kinds of data that are available these days that are exciting from my perspective. The high throughput screening and automation that produces a lot of data, cellular data, phenotypic data. A lot of companies are using these technologies to produce data. And then there's a lot of volumes of omics data, proteomics, genomics, metabolomics, lipidomics. And then there's the genetic perturbations. I've worked at a couple of places where the goal is to perturb cells or microbes, perturb their genetics so that you get a different outcome. You create a new chemical. So a lot of advances in the past decade or so, even in the past 5 years, and very specific in the past year, there's been scientific advances, technological advances that are making this time very exciting. So I'll get into a little bit about 23andMe and what we do at the company. Our mission is to help people access, understand, and benefit from the human genome. And we take this really seriously, and it always comes up. And I've been really impressed with how this is really important to our executives and to Anne, who's our CEO. We genuinely want to make sure that people are benefiting from the information and the infrastructure that we build. Some highlights, we've sold over 12 million kits. We've collected over 3 billion survey question answers. 80% of our customers participate in research, so they actively consent to doing research. And we're the first company with FDA authorization for our direct-to-consumer genetic health risk reports. We've got over 150 published research papers, and our research team is very active in publishing their findings. And we have a unique interconnected business. This also is a model that I have seen that's different with 23andMe, and it's proved very sort of effective. We have our consumer business, which is the kit you spit in, you send it in, and we give you information on your ancestry and your health predispositions. But then we also have a research arm that takes in that data, runs bioinformatics pipelines, and looks for information within that genetics data and phenotypic data to work with our therapeutics arm to discover drugs, but also to do other types of research that's relevant for our consumers. For example, looking at different populations, looking at genetics of populations that are not commonly studied, for example. So our research arm does a lot of work. It feeds into our therapeutics and consumer business. And so all of this is really interconnected. I want to talk a bit about research because this is a team I work very closely with. What do we do? So customers consent to participate and actively opt in. It's not an opt out. We have independent third-party board that has oversight and approval over the research that we do. Customers can end their participation at any point, and our data is always aggregated and de-identified. I alluded to this, but diversity research efforts are very important to us because a lot of research has typically been done on European populations, which causes issues when it comes to drugs that are in the market. They don't work as effectively in a lot of different populations. So this is why it's important for us to take a look at populations that are not as well represented. So we have global genetics projects, we have populations collaborations, we have an African American sequence project going on, and also Latino sequencing project. And also we have a big database. So because of our consumer business that feeds into our research, we get a lot of cohorts of people with different diseases. So whether we're talking about depression or high cholesterol, diabetes, Crohn's disease, scleroderma, there's a lot. These cohorts are far larger than if you were to do, for example, a study with a different institution. So we're in a very good position to be carrying out all kinds of research studies, and we collaborate often with academics and other partners. So these large cohorts allow us to uncover new findings. This is an example of a Nature Neuroscience paper where we were able to identify 102 independent variants of importance in depression. And how were we able to find that is we looked at data of over 800,000 individuals. So it was the largest depression study ever to date. So all this data and all these studies, this is a unique situation data-wise, but also to be able to analyze and work with large data, you need the right infrastructure. So this is what my team is concerned with, building tools and infrastructure to make sure that we can power our research. We can look through the data effectively and extract patterns, trends, really extract the juice out of that data. So this is what I mean by powering research, building the right infrastructure to allow our researchers to do their work. So what does this team do? So we build and support world-class big data services, computes, and machine learning platforms, and analytics environments to power research and therapeutics. Some of the key features we're after. Systems have to be scalable, performant, and cost-effective, modular, accessible, and easy to use, and compliant. Compliance is a big deal for us for obvious reasons. Secure and standardized. This is an organization that truly has big data. So we think a lot about how do we manage it, secure it, ensure that our scientists have appropriate access, and so on. A little bit more on big data storage and processing. We have a cloud-backed platform built to serve 12 million plus genotypes, 3 billion plus phenotypes for our consumer product and for our research teams. We have big data processing pipelines and databases, which make data available to research therapeutics and our business intelligence teams. Capability, reliability, and speed for growing customer base. Our customer base continues to grow. We have to make sure our systems can handle that. And we evaluate and monitor hundreds of machine learning models on the fly. We have to make sure that our models can service millions of customers that come onto our mobile application or our website. In addition, we support pipelines for our research and therapeutics teams. So this is sort of an overview. If you look at our business functions, we've got our consumers, or health and ancestry. We've got research and we've got therapeutics. Then we have analytics environments that they operate in. So these are AWS environments that these teams use. And then the services that we make available as part of our infrastructure. If you start at the bottom here, there's data services. Built on top of that are compute services. And then on top of that are machine learning services that all feed into each other. And all of them, there's a lot of sort of support and teams and focus to think about how to build these systems appropriately. We also have web applications that some of our scientists use. And the goal here is to make sure these services really are accessible to the various environments. So we are not duplicating data sets. We are as secure as possible and as cost effective as possible. So ideally, we want all our analytics environments to be accessing the same services where possible. I want to get into a little bit of data science at 23andMe. 23andMe, there's a lot of data science going on in lots of teams. So I'll just give an overview of a couple of areas. Areas of work are, we have ancestry models, so ancestry composition. This is the model that tells you where in the world are you from, so population classifiers. We also have DNA relatives algorithms, which means we tell you who are you related to in our database. And then there's another feature called the family tree, and there's some specific models that are built as part of this product. I'm going to talk mostly about our health models and our target discovery work. Health models, this is really a combination of statistical genetics, and we are focused a lot on building polygenic risk scores that I'll talk a little bit more about. Same in target discovery, there's a lot of statistical genetics work that goes on, and we also do use polygenic risk scores. So this is really, you can think of health models as more sort of preventative models, whereas target discovery is really more on the therapeutics and looking for a drug to cure a disease type of work. So health predisposition models, polygenic risk scores. These are the models we built to tell you what are your chances of getting a certain disease. So it's data-driven disease risk prediction. We look at genetics, lifestyle, environment, put this data into machine learning models, and then we give you a personalized disease risk assessment. Here's an example of a relatively recent product we released on the consumer side. So it's our heart health report, set of reports. It's a heart hub. And this is backed by a product we built called the PRS machine, the Polygenic Risk Score machine. So here it says, hey, Shiva, your genetic result is associated with an increased likelihood of developing CAD. So here we tell people where do they lie on this spectrum of lowest risk to highest risk. And all of this is powered by looking at your genetics. So there's a series of steps that happen to allow us to communicate this information to our users. For example, initially we run genome-wide association studies to look at what are the genetic markers for a certain disease. So for example, caffeine jitters is monogenic. So there's typically one variant involved, one sort of SNP involved, which makes this, not many things are sort of monogenic. They also have negligible environmental influence. For example, hemophilia and cystic fibrosis are examples of monogenic diseases. There's also highly polygenic diseases, and these are more common, and they are harder to sort of give insights on because there's a lot of variants that could be involved. There's And these common variants contribute smaller effects to the overall results. And often polygenic diseases have a strong environmental component. And the prediction here relies heavily on polygenic modeling. Here, if you have this variant, you don't need a model to tell you this. You have this variant or you don't. Here, we have to build models to tackle, sort of add up the weights of these variants appropriately and make a prediction of whether or not you are at higher risk or not. So here's the polygenic risk score pipeline. You define the phenotype. So you say, hey, do you have a high cholesterol, LDL, let's say. We split our cohort into those who said they do and they don't. And then we run a genome-wide association study, compare the genetics of those who said they do and they don't. And we identify markers or variants or SNPs that are implicated in the cases. So the folks who said they do have LDL. And then we build models, sometimes hundreds of models. We select the best one. And then we train and validate the model using the polygenic risk score machine. And this has proven effective. We are now, as part of our subscription product, we release one PRS model report per month. So here's our PRS platform. It's a production machine learning at scale. We've got the data services that we use, so the genetic data, possibly QC data, we have phenotypic data, and so on. We run the GWAS, we train the models, we track all the models with MLflow, we store the selected models in a repo, and then these get surfaced in our health reports, also can be used by our therapeutics team. So this is end-to-end infrastructure, a prediction endpoint that serves 12 million plus customers. We're also leveraging the latest technology. Some of these are open source, like MLflow is by Databricks, and this allows us to track and monitor our hundreds of models that we build for our consumer product, but also our research team is using this. We based a lot of our infrastructure. We looked at a lot of existing designs. So we looked at Uber's Michelangelo. So they also have a similar platform where they get the data, they train the models, they evaluate the models, and then they deploy and monitor. Very similar to our framework for this. We're also more recently using Metaflow by Netflix, and this is a nice interface for data scientists to go through step-by-step process of using the data, working with it, and then producing models and putting it into production. Okay, so that's our health side. That is prediction, giving you predictions on your predisposition to a variety of diseases. We also focus a lot on target discovery using the same data sets. So how do we do that? And why do we do this? So it's been shown that drugs with human genetic support are 2 to 3 times more likely to succeed through the clinical approval process. So this means that if we find genes that are implicated in a certain disorder, those genes will likely have more success at being the right drug targets, or the proteins that they encode will have a better chance of being the right drug targets. So here's what it looks like. DNA-based target discovery, how it works. We collect the survey or phenotype and genetic data through our consumer applications, and then we run the GWAS, and we run a similar analysis called PheWAS, so phenotype-wide association study, where we look at which SNPs are implicated in a variety of disorders. And we identify the targets that we're interested in using this and other analyses. So we identify the target, and by target, again, we mean this is the protein that the drug should bind to. And the protein is translated from the gene. So when we find a SNP, that SNP will be part of a gene often, or associated with a gene, and then we try to see what protein that gene encodes, and then that protein becomes a target. So we find the target, and then we go through the drug discovery process, which is, testing different kinds of compounds for this target, using different cell lines, animal models, and so on. And then once that's all done, we've done a ton of analysis, then we go through the approvals process and then start clinical trials. And then once that all succeeds, and this is a very long process, we get a product approved. But we think this is a good way of target identification if you're using genetics, because it gives you an indication of what are the genes that could be implicated, is there genetic backing for this target, and how common are they? How many people have this gene? If you make a drug for something like this, is it going to suit most of the population or not? These are examples from Alzheimer's and Parkinson's disease and the prevalence of the genes, and how many people have the gene, and then the risk of the gene for Alzheimer's disease. So we use this kind of information to select the targets we want to work on. There's a lot to do though. Machine learning for drug discovery is a growing field. There's a lot of companies doing this work. There's a lot of technology out there that's very exciting. So we think about, how do we use machine learning for drug discovery? There's ways to do that for target discovery, target classification for druggability, lead drug identification, so what drugs could actually bind to this target of interest, and then looking at drug response and much more. You might have heard of AlphaFold recently from DeepMind, which was able to very effectively predict the structure of proteins or targets. So there's been a ton of advancements in this field, and it's an exciting time to deploy machine learning for drug discovery. What does our journey so far look like? We have a unique data catalog. So models based on genetic and phenotypic data enable us to build personalized products for prevention and treatment. Both of these are important sides of our business, and we try to use our data as effectively as possible on both sides. Infrastructure has taken time to build, and it continues to evolve. We're never done. It's never like, okay, we've got perfect infrastructure now, we can hang up our hats and go home. This is always evolving. There's always new technologies, always better ways of dealing with your data. So we've got cloud native environments that power research and discovery. We have data catalogs, feature engineering that help us extract value from our data. And we have machine learning workflows and platforms for research and production. And we try to consolidate those as much as possible. And that is the end of my presentation. Thank you very much for your attention. I look forward to taking your questions.
That was Shiva Amiri, Director of Research Infrastructure at 23andMe, who spoke about building genomic analysis and ML platforms for personalized health drug discovery. If you'd like to watch more videos like this, check out our DSS Insider platforms in the comments section, where you can get more content like this whenever you'd like. Thanks and enjoy!